Trials of Mana is a Square Enix action-adventure JRPG that features 6 different main characters and a story that changes depending on which of them you choose. This is a remake of Seiken Densetsu 3, a game that didn't see localization outside Japan until 2019, 24 years after its original release. It's a forgotten classic known for its twisting plot, class system, and beautiful graphics. This version sets out to modernize the original and make it more accessible to people playing video games in 2020, and luckily it succeeds. Let's jump in.
Let's go!
Trials of Mana starts with a simple choice: who do you want to play as? Then you're presented with 6 characters from various backgrounds who have different strengths and weaknesses, and you select 3 of them for a playthrough. Each character excels in certain situations, and a part of the joy of this game is figuring out which hero or combination to use against different types of enemies. However, this is a JRPG, and the crazy plot is at least as important as the min-maxing. Trials of Mana features a surprisingly dark story revolving around nations being manipulated into waging war. Each character you can choose from has a shared nemesis with one other hero, and the plot of the game will be altered depending on who is in your squad. This choice is so important that even the final dungeon and boss depend on who your main character is, so you may want to do some research on the best characters to pair together before starting the game. Once the story reaches a certain point, you'll be able to switch characters' classes. You'll choose a light or dark class to change into. The light upgrades tend to have healing and buff spells, while the dark ones grant offensive and debuff spells. Either way, your butt kicking goes up very noticeably and feels real good. You can customize your characters further with more class changes and equipable chain skills, which are little buffs that you get for leveling up and talking to certain characters. For a game with all these options, Trials of Mana never feels overwhelming. Every choice feels like a good one, and there's no harm in going back and trying new things, unlike the SNES original. Frankly, I think everything in this remake is an improvement. The music is a gorgeous orchestration of the themes taken from the first 3 Mana games, and while you can't switch to the 16-bit soundtrack, you'd be missing out on a lot of more modern takes. Likewise, the graphics are a pleasure to look at as well. This is a colorful game, and the character and enemy designs stick close to the originals. While the Switch version doesn't run at a full 60 frames per second, it's every bit as pretty as the PS4 version is. The game systems move smoothly, and you'll pretty much always get a concise explanation for what you're supposed to be doing. Combat is fun and engaging, with just enough tactical depth to keep it interesting. And the boss battles, my goodness. Each major encounter feels unique and makes you think differently about how to tackle it. And there's a real sense of achievement when taking down a giant boss. Seriously, a lot of the boss fights are epic and just so fun to play. So with these boss fights, combat in general, and character customization, I've come to the conclusion that the team behind Trials of Mana strikes the perfect balance between strategy and action. However, it didn't nail everything perfectly. The maps in Trials of Mana are mostly faithful to the original SNES versions, which means the camera can get pretty funky in small rooms designed for a 2D game. In fact, most of the areas are on the smaller side, and moving between them will trigger a load screen. They're rarely more than 15 seconds, but it really starts to add up after a while and could get pretty annoying. Another gripe, due to the complex nature of the story and the script, your characters almost never interact directly with each other. Additionally, the main campaign clocks in around 25 to 30 hours. Considering you'd have to play through Trials of Mana at least 3 times to get the full story, it can become pretty repetitive. As for the voice acting, which I've noticed is a pretty big concern in the YouTube comments ever since we posted our preview, I thought most of the main cast was fine. However, it often didn't match the game. Honestly, the voices rarely match what the characters are doing on screen. For example, this character is talking very quietly and serious, but his body language is all crazy. It just doesn't fit at all.
All I believe in is strength, but I'll listen to what you have to say if you tell me how to become more powerful.
Manners, you oaf!
And while most of the performances are technically good, there are more flubbed lines than I expected in an otherwise excellent game. And don't get me started on Charlotte. Oh, Charlotte. Trials of Mana adds a post-game campaign that gives your characters access to a 4th class level, and a new dungeon. And getting these new upgrades involves a small personal mission for each of the heroes, which add a nice bit of nuance to their individual stories. This additional dungeon is a pretty massive reward after beating the game, culminating into an amazing boss battle. The extra content clocks in at around 7 hours in total, and has a little something for the fans of the greater Mana series. Upon completion, you also get a New Game Plus mode. Pretty cool if you ask me. This Trials of Mana remake often feels like it came out in the 90s, for better or worse. Quirks in the localization script, over-the-top voice acting, and many of the wackier story beats are things that we don't get much of these days, but these were quite common back in the day. Likewise, the level design and some of the old mechanics can either feel familiar or quaint, depending on how you're approaching them. Ultimately, I felt like a kid again while playing this game, and that's not a bad thing in my book. Trials of Mana is a wonderful remake of a classic JRPG that most Westerners never experienced. More than that, it's proof that Square Enix is willing to put in the work and learn from its past mistakes when updating old favorites. My hope is that it doesn't get overshadowed by the AAA games that have been dominating gamers' attention over the past few months, including a certain remake of another JRPG from the 90s. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. From the story to the soundtrack to the gameplay, old fans and new will find something to love in this game. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments section below. Do you plan on picking up Trials of Mana Remake for the Nintendo Switch or PS4 or wherever else you can play it? Let us know, and if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you didn't, hit that thumbs down, and I will talk to you guys later.
You know, they used to call this place Gem Valley because of all the crystals in the rock walls. You know.